I'm Josh Baer, and welcome to this edition of No Reserve. Most people think my last name is Fax, but in fact my name is Josh Baer. I created the Baer Fax that many of you know about 25 years ago in response to a need I saw in the arts world, which was inside information delivered quickly. So the fax machine was new technology before the internet existed. So for 25 years, I've been the go-to source about the workings of the art market and the inside dealings of the art world. Now, No Reserve is doing their first artist studio visit. We chose Haley Mellin because we, A, wanted to go there ourselves, B, we wanted to see how an environmentalist was working in this time of great climate change and upheaval, and C, we wanted to see what work she was making. Haley, welcome to the first version of No Reserves in the studio. You're the first artist that I wanted to go see in this lockdown. In fact, I'd wanted to set up a studio visit before this, and March hit, and now it's like, during all this COVID, what's it mean? What's it like to be an artist during this turbulent period?
Well, it's great to see you, Josh, digitally, and it's an honor to be doing this with you. I think that being an artist now is similar to how it's been for thousands of years. I mean, you have a sense of urgency. You want to document the time that you're working in. You want to respond to it. You want to be accurate. At the same time, there's also a sense of patience, because you want to make something that lasts and that has legacy to it and that endures.
I mean, you're coming to us from almost the epicenter of Northern California with all this climate change that you've been involved with. How has that affected your head in this time?
Well, as they say, climate change is very real. Outside right now, the sun is red and the sky is white. And so it's very clear how much we're impacting the planet, and that's just very much right at home. I see institutions becoming exceptionally emboldened in making decisive action toward their climate effects and their footprint. You have the ICA in LA going fully solar. The Guggenheim, I worked with them in offsetting their Rem Koolhaas show, so they did a full carbon neutral exhibition. I think it was the first in the US. And you have organizations like Hauser and Wirth that are deeply connected to the planet, to natural solutions, to climate change. So it's great to see what people are doing, and I'm just so excited to think, a couple of years from now, what more people will be doing to be responsible for the space that they occupy.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit. You've raised, close to $100 million personally to buy back land in the rainforest.
I started working with artists in doing that and founded a nonprofit called Art to Acres, where one artwork conserves one location. So recently we worked with a 22-inch by 18-inch painting, and it conserved 2 million acres of indigenous land in Peru. And half of that land is now also going to be a national park. So in doing so, over time, I guess we've worked with about 45 artists and one collector, Agnes Gunn, conserved land with a beautiful Ed Ruscha. And I really like the process. I love working with artists because they're really direct. They tell you what they're looking for. And I think that an artwork and a large-scale landscape are rather similar, because both things are about legacy, they're about what endures, and a sense of permanence.
I was looking at your paintings of bananas, and it reminded me of being sort of the polar opposite, but almost the same thing, of my favorite artwork of 2019. Can you guess where I might be going there?
Yeah, the Maurizio Cattelan.
Maurizio Cattelan's. Now, if I could have bought one work of art for myself last year, and some people will look at me strangely, I'm looking at my wife, it's like, I know, but the Maurizio Cattelan banana, I thought was maybe the singular work of art last year. And is it more poignant now? Is he something that you're thinking about, but from a completely different vantage point?
I think that's a great question. I really enjoyed the work. I continue to enjoy it. I like how it continues to pop up in different forms. Matthew Israel just published a great book with it on its cover. And overall, I think he's talking about a lot of different things at once. I agree with you. I think it would be a good work to own.
Do you feel the climate change move within the museums, that's not just this week's political fad? Do you think that's going to be long lasting?
Climate is an awareness thing, right? I don't want to get too gross, but the truth is we pay someone to take away our garbage. We pay someone to take away our sewage. And we continue to breathe in and out. We let go of carbon dioxide. Everything we do makes carbon dioxide, but it's an invisible gas. And so we've never had to be responsible for it as a release. It's been building up in our atmosphere, and it's making our planet hotter. And so what we need to do is just draw that gas back down. It's very easy to do. I mean, a large scale exhibition could have carbon drawn down for maybe $150. It's not a it's not a major financial reach, but it is a pretty major educational reach. And so when people start doing this, other people become aware and they say, hey, I want to do that too. So overall, I really do think institutions are in it for the long haul. There's great people involved. They're really committed. And one of the things I love is that people are coming together. There's a new organization in New York called Art to Zero that's been working on supporting studios and galleries, et cetera, in becoming carbon or net zero neutral. There's another group initiative that I really, really like called Galleries Commit. And it's working within New York in terms of how can galleries come together and do everything from being responsible to single-use plastics, but also like looking at the building, like how environmentally suitable is the building. So overall, there's great energy coming together. And I think it's a really exciting time to be part of this conversation. Land conservation and art has a major history. I mean, you have the family that co-founded MoMA, also conserving the Grand Tetons in the US. And I think that people understand how these two things come together, all the more so with climate and the fact that land is some of our best resource for calming the climate and stabilizing it. So overall, my sense is that artists are exceptionally resourceful. They focus on creativity, and it's creativity that's going to bring us past some of these incredible challenges we have coming up. And then lastly, on an anecdotal line, one of the things I love about land conservation is after you've done all the contracts and the money and you spent time and work, you haven't done anything at all, because all you've done is made this like little invisible line around a space, letting it continue to be exactly what it always was. So it's this very sort of, for lack of a better word, Zen activity, because there's so much work, and then the thing looks like it looked before you started. So it's very humbling as well.
Now we're joined by Amy Capolazzo of Sotheby's and Jay Pangolin of Phillips, two of the leading figures in the auction market and former colleagues, so they may be a little too nice to each other, to talk about this year's auctions in the fall in a post-COVID environment. So let's dive right into it. It's late September. What's going to happen this fall?
Well, I think sheltering at home made people look at their walls very seriously and want to consider art and buy art. And I guess I'm surprised and pleasantly surprised how strong the marketplace held up. Private sales were brisk. We managed to mount decent enough auctions in sort of a televised manner. I think we're probably, in for a kind of similar fall market climate that we felt in the last couple of months. Jean-Paul?
Yeah. And I think it's been a really interesting time for both Sotheby's and for us. That sort of this whole digitalization, the televised versions that we did, it just taps into a much wider audience. This is the direction that the world is moving into. That's not going to go away. And I think that the big race basically is not how big your sale room is, but how big your digital reach is.
It's a permanent disruption,
yeah,
for sure.
But then after a while, it'll feel like the norm. So is there another next step coming soon that you can feel?
None of the auction houses, none of the advisory firms, banks that run advisory firms, funds, very few are doing like cutting edge technological plays in their areas. So now there's a real, I would say, while the arms race might have been marketing might and catalogs and events and dinners. Now the marketing might is all digital reach. And that's kind of all that matters.
I think that what became clear during this period, we all want to make a margin. And,
I think we all want to, I think nobody wants to do anything stupid.
Yeah.
We all want to make good business. We all want to keep our colleagues employed. We all want to run a good company. We all want to please our consigners. We want to be, excellent stewards of the marketplace and be the place where people want to come and buy things. I mean, you want to be all those. You want to make smart decisions. You want to be sober and intelligent. And I think I'm happy to lose something if the consensus around here at Sotheby's was that it was, that was business too expensive to take on for the reward. So.
Well, that all sounds tremendously rational, and I don't disagree. Were we sometimes doing things irrationally?
2012,
Big time. From all the houses.
Yeah, exactly. So that's partially why I stepped out of the auction business, because I felt it was,
So
irrational.
You're saying that this is a more rational moment, not that it's just normally rational than it had been.
Look, it's calculated risk. It's intelligent risk. We use tons of data around here. We have like a data company, what we call the data lake, behind the walls here, that knows everything. So like, the sort of women prayer and punt by which you did guarantee deals in 2007, 2008, then again in 2010, 11, 12, after the dip in the market. There's a lot of knowledge that people's very experienced eyes bring to the table when we look at objects, but we also rely, pretty thoughtfully and heavily on, okay, the sell-through rate for that artist across the board right now is 71%. We have tons of data that helps guide you where you can actually look at depth of marketplace in a really clinical and scientific way.
See, I think of the night sales as sort of like being the haute couture of the fashion world, where the money is like in the perfume, or here the money's in the day sales, where you make really a ton of money.
Well, there's
a sense, it's not an exact match, but a little bit of like, we get that attention, and then if we have a $200 million worth of day sales in New York in a year, that's possibly more profitable.
So it used to be that way. Certainly in my previous career, my previous job when I was with another auction house. But I always liked the day sales and the sort of bread and butter variety, like the sort of, we used to call it la vache à lait, the cash cow was the day sale. And it is consistent, and you can depend on that as like steady revenue. At the same time, if you get your deal structures right, the night sales are by far more profitable. So I think we've done a very good job of getting our deals right. And they maybe are a little bit less consistent, but when it's a boom, it's a good one.
How about a prediction for something this fall? Specific.
I predict that the election has no impact on the art market whatsoever.
And I think records will be broken. I really do.
Can you break it? Is records for trophy art, for young art? Is there a specific object that you know about? Something coming up in Christie's sale in 2 weeks?
Well, Christie's I wouldn't talk about, but Phillips, we have a beautiful basilisk from '82 coming up in London, which I think from Marcel Bouillon's collection, which I think is going to do fantastically well. I also think because the volume hasn't been the same as last year, so there is enough people that want to buy art and just simply haven't had the opportunity that they were waiting for.
And Amy, is there a specific object that Sotheby's has coming in the next month or two that's you can point to, either as a personal favorite you think that artist is ready to take off, or an artwork that's so special that you think keep
yes,
an eye on
I'm
this
not
one?
sure I can. Yeah, stay tuned. Watch for that.
What Amy didn't reveal is the great Botticelli they have coming up from the collection of Sheldon Solo for about $80 million. Not to mention the Banksy Monet. Will this too go into the collection of Vladimir Putin? I don't know. The people who can tell you most about the auction business are not always the people at the auction houses, but the people who used to be at the auction houses. That's why we have Gabby Palmieri, former head of contemporary art at Sotheby's and now independent art advisor, being our guest walking through Christie's to give us the inside scoop of how auctions really work. Gabby, it's great to bump into you here at Christie's for this preview. As a former auction house rep, head of contemporary art, now an art advisor, maybe you can share some insights into what we're seeing as we stand from this great Twombly.
All auction house specialists have to think real long and hard and thoughtful about how works are going to be hung, where they're going to be hung, and the message that that very installation is going to send to the market. This sales season, I actually have more buyers than I have sellers at this moment. Price points are a wide range. You know, there are the aspirational buyers that I have right now who are saying that perhaps this is the moment to try to reach a bit higher because the market conditions might enable them to acquire something at a point where maybe there'll be less competition, which didn't prove to be the case in July. And then I have clients who are looking, for opportunities in the 6, and 7-figure ranges.
It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't believe it.
Josh, you're wearing pants.
I mean, maybe not Ryan Fitzpatrick, but Alex, you are a direct market comparable.
Wow, this Maurizio Catalan's pretty great.
No, this is actually Stan. Stan is 67 million years old. He's going to be the last lot of our sale this season. He's been on our minds for a couple of years now. This is actually not his real skull. His skull is back there. His skull is too heavy for any armature, so it would bring it down. That's what you always have in museums and in exhibitions. They replicate the skull because it's too heavy generally for a T.rex. But everything else, it's about 80%. It's the second most complete T.rex ever found on planet Earth.
Can we see the actual skull?
Yeah, I'll bring you over to the real skull. The summer was a strange place to be here in the tri-state area. The art market was moving, but more schlepping than moving, to tell you the truth, and with private sales being very active, but people didn't see art, and I think there's a hunger and an excitement to finally come here again. The response is very positive from people wanting to see art and being happy that finally we can see it again, because it was very complicated for a while.
Gabby, lot one of an auction. Damien Hirst, you've done a lot of sales. What does lot one mean? What does this say to you?
Lot one is a big signifier, and lot one signifies the mood of the sale. There's a lot at stake on both ends, let's put it that way. You have a lot at stake as it's going to dictate the perception, meaning that you have a lot of anticipation that lot one is going to be a runner. That lot one is going to trade with significant bidding that is going to kind of put everybody in a good mood as you roll into the choreography of the subsequent lots. That being said, is that lot number one also is such a pride of placement, where it also speaks to the actual consignor, that the consignor would have been convinced to be entrusting a work that also shows that they believe as well that there is going to be kind of some upside potential to the consignment. What's taken out of the virtual auction is the mood of the room. And how many articles did you read in the post-mortem of auctions that said the mood was jubilant, people were laughing and chatting and so on, and then when a work doesn't sell, it becomes kind of a clutch your pearls moment, like, and here you're not going to see that because you can't have the room grumbling and mumbling and that kind of side commentary, if you will. But I don't think it's that the bidders are feeling that malleable, that they're going to feel that, oh, if this doesn't sell, the rest doesn't sell. It is really more to say lot one flies, and the auction specialists are talking to their clients and saying that had a lot of bidding, and it puts everyone gives everyone a little bit more confidence.
Is there a way you conceive of building a collection with a client?
It has to begin with what they love, the response element, the emotional quality to me of a work of art, saying, they wake up and they're still thinking about it. That to me is where if we're starting at, the first step forward, that preparation step is, what do you see? What do you respond to? Then the next questions become why, and then how can we go points of departure to where?
I like to say, good is the enemy of great. I like to say, let's find things we love, not things we like, and go from there.
Words to live by.
It was great to run into Alex Rotter, particularly since he could see that I was wearing pants and acting like a grown-up compared to last time we Zoomed. So now we asked our correspondent in California, Sarah Thornton, to get a perspective on how collectors are looking at the art market at the moment and how they're dealing with buying art in this COVID environment. So she's brought us Bob Rennie from Vancouver, who has a major private collection and a private museum that's open to the public.
Bob, it is great to see you. The last trip I made was to see one of your marvelous shows at the Rennie Museum in Vancouver. Bob's collection consists of about 2,600 works, many of them very important pieces, especially when it comes to issues of social justice, very important African American artists and women artists. And I wonder, one of the things that you've told me in the past is that you own trophies, but you don't buy trophies. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thanks for having me on. But it's how this sort of started is, Barclay Hendricks' Brilliantly Endowed, or Kerry James Marshall's Invisible Man from '86. It's an awful word, but they are trophies, but we don't acquire trophies. So we try and bookend our artists' careers, and our job is not our voice, yet here I am using my voice, but to elevate the artist's voice.
Black Lives Matter has arguably had a positive impact on the overall value of your collection. And I'm wondering if you have any predictions for how the election might impact the art market.
We bought Kerry James Marshall's Invisible Man in the 90s at a furniture auction in Los Angeles. And I have received a phone call when I paid $54,000 for it that we paid way too much and people are laughing at me. So from a value point of view, these voices have to be elevated. And it was Kerry James Marshall who said to me, Bob, if you go to a museum and you don't see a black figure on the wall, then you think it doesn't belong. And that resonated with me over 20 years ago. And that thread carries through. And the fight has come to the surface, but it has not changed. And we have 92 works out on loan to museums. I'm very autistic about numbers. And so we're aware of how we're participating out there, but we're going to be very, very careful to listen to what the artists want and what museums need. And I think within 10 years we'll probably close our museum, and I have a fantasy of becoming the greatest lender in the world, and that's helping with shipping and helping artists get their works into museums, where it's going to be much more difficult for museums to acquire, for one thing, but to finance even putting on a show, if what we're seeing today is any indication of what's to come.
I have met few collectors with such a certain eye. I'm always impressed by the speed and accuracy with which you know what you want and what makes for a larger conversation within your collection. And there's this cliche in the art world that some collectors buy with their ears and others buy with their eyes. And I was just wondering what that expression meant to you.
Well, I used to collect with my ear, and I collected only Canadian art a lot of Canadian art from when I was 17 years old. I was married, and Mieko was an artist, and that got the needle in the arm about art and collecting. And then I decided in the late 80s, early 90s that wasn't the right thing for me to do, that I wanted to start buying with my eye and my heart. And that's what we did. But I actually mentioned to Josh before we came on to this interview that nothing comes into the collection that doesn't speak to the collection. So once the collection got going, if we just followed our heart, and if you're talking to Kerry James Marshall's work, or you're talking to Dora Salcedo's, or you're talking to Mona Hatoum's, it is easy to stay on the same path.
Collecting with a mission rather than being guided by commission. And one of the contrasts that I really like is, in your words, the difference between social jewelry and social justice. And do you have any guidance for other collectors on that score?
I just see a lot of people diving into the social injustice and social commentary side that haven't participated before. And it's easy to criticize that they shouldn't be doing it, but they're supporting artists, and maybe they might get in for the wrong reason, but some of them will stay in for the right reasons. So I'm really tempering it. How I look at that now is, let's support artists. You might get in for the wrong reason because it's good Starbucks or dinner conversation, but you might stay for the right reasons and support artists and support museums moving forward. So that's sort of, I'm old. It's just sort of the way I'm looking at things.
That's it for this episode of No Reserve. Join us in a few days for the post-game show with Amalia Diane, Adam Lindemann, Chairman of Christie's Mark Porter,